Beloved friends, the life you live today is a mirror of the assumptions you hold about yourself. Every repeated thought, every reaction, every automatic behavior is not merely a coincidence, but a seed planted in the garden of your inner consciousness. If you have wondered why the same cycles appear again and again, why circumstances repeat even though you desire change, it is because you are faithfully acting out a script written by your deepest beliefs. Every moment of your life is a living mirror, faithfully reflecting the assumptions you hold about yourself and the world. When you open your eyes in the morning, the world you step into is not neutral. It is shaped by the inner states you have nurtured, whether consciously or unconsciously. What you see, hear, and experience is not simply happening to you. It is happening through you because of the concepts you carry. If you believe you are limited, you will find limitation. If you believe you are blessed, opportunities seem to appear as if by magic. This is not a matter of luck or chance. It is a principle of life as unchangeable as gravity. Many imagine they are victims of circumstance, yet the circumstances they face are the outer garment of inner patterns. The relationships you attract, the opportunities you meet, the problems you repeatedly encounter are all playing out the script you wrote with your deepest convictions. You may consciously want prosperity while assuming poverty in your heart. You may desire love while assuming rejection as inevitable. The world, as a faithful servant, reflects not your wishes but your assumptions, because assumptions are living states of consciousness, and states of consciousness are creative. An assumption is not merely an idle thought. It is a feeling, an inner stance, a lens through which you interpret reality. It is the invisible atmosphere you carry into every situation. Like tinted glasses, your assumptions color everything you see. Two people can walk into the same room and experience entirely different worlds, because their assumptions filter and shape their perceptions. If you begin to change your assumptions, your experience of life will change accordingly, and with persistence the very facts of life begin to rearrange themselves. Consider how, in your own experience, habitual thoughts and feelings have formed predictable patterns. Perhaps you have noticed that the same kinds of challenges recur again and again. This is not coincidence. Life is presenting to you the content of your inner world so that you might become conscious of it. Each repetition is an invitation to notice the assumption at work and to choose again. If you continue to hold the same inner stance, the outer pattern persists. If you shift the stance, the pattern dissolves. The power of assumption is subtle yet absolute. It does not shout, it simply is. You cannot escape it by pretending it is not there, any more than you can escape your shadow by turning away from the sun. But you can become aware of it. You can pause and ask yourself, what am I assuming about myself right now? What am I assuming about life, about people, about this situation? These quiet questions begin to loosen the grip of unconscious patterns and open the door to new possibilities. The mirror of reality does not respond to frantic effort or outward struggle. It responds to inner alignment. When you cultivate an assumption of success, you start to think, speak, and act from success. When you cultivate an assumption of love, you find yourself behaving lovingly and interpreting others as loving. The outer world echoes back the inner change with uncanny precision. You begin to experience coincidences, synchronicities, and shifts in circumstances that seem almost magical, but are simply the natural outworking of a new inner state. Every thought felt with conviction is a seed dropped into the soil of the subconscious, and the subconscious faithfully brings forth the harvest of whatever is planted. If you plant seeds of lack, lack must grow. If you plant seeds of abundance, abundance must grow. The harvest may not appear instantly, but it is inevitable because the law of assumption is inexorable. You are not punished for your assumptions, you are living out their fruit. The creative process is impersonal and impartial, available to anyone who dares to become aware of it and use it consciously. To break the habit of being yourself is to recognize that much of what you call yourself is nothing more than conditioning, layers of repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors absorbed from your past. From childhood, you were imprinted with the voices of parents, teachers, society, and culture. Their words, attitudes, and expectations shaped your view of who you are and what is possible for you. Over time, these impressions hardened into habits, and habits became identity. You began to believe that the way you think and feel is simply who you are, when in truth it is only a learned pattern, a collection of responses you have repeated so often that they appear natural. To release conditioning is not to deny your past, but to understand that you are not bound by it. You are not the sum of your memories, nor are you chained to the repetition of old experiences. Conditioning keeps you circling the same ground, responding to life in the same predictable ways, expecting the same outcomes, and interpreting events through the same lens. When you identify with this conditioning, you mistake the mask for the self, but the true self is infinitely free, infinitely creative, and always capable of renewal. Consider how the body itself reflects conditioning. If you rehearse stress long enough, the body adapts to it, and tension becomes the default state. If you rehearse doubt long enough, the body anticipates failure before you even begin. If you rehearse anger long enough, your physiology prepares for conflict even in peaceful situations. In this way, conditioning is not just mental, but also physical. The body becomes addicted to familiar emotions, and the mind justifies them by seeking out situations that match. Thus you find yourself living the same story again and again, not because you desire it, but because your conditioning insists on it. To break this cycle, you must see that you are more than the body's memory and more than the mind's repetition. You are the observer who can watch these patterns, question them, and withdraw attention from them. The moment you cease to feed an old pattern with your focus, it begins to weaken. What was once automatic becomes visible, and what is visible can be changed. Awareness loosens the grip of conditioning, and imagination plants the seed of something new. Releasing conditioning does not mean struggling against it or condemning yourself for having it. Struggle only reinforces the reality of the old state. Instead, you release conditioning by gently redirecting attention, by consciously rehearsing a new way of being until it feels more natural than the old. Just as you once practiced fear, doubt, and limitation into habit, you can practice confidence, faith, and possibility into habit. The nervous system rewires, the body adjusts, and the mind learns to support this new identity. When you recognize conditioning for what it is, a pattern, not a destiny, you begin to reclaim your freedom. The anger that once seemed inevitable is revealed as a learned reaction. The sadness that seemed permanent is seen as a memory echoing in the present. The doubt that seemed part of your character is unmasked as a voice you borrowed long ago. As you withdraw belief from these old voices, they lose power, and you discover the quiet strength of your true self beneath them. To release conditioning is also to recognize that the world outside you often reflects it back. People may still expect you to be who you were. Circumstances may still invite you to respond in old ways, but each moment gives you the choice. Will you step into the old pattern, or will you embody the new self you have chosen? This choice, made again and again, gradually dissolves the momentum of conditioning and establishes a new identity rooted not in the past, but in conscious creation. Awareness is the opening through which every transformation enters. Without it, you drift as a passenger in your own life, acting out patterns you never consciously chose. With it, you become the driver, capable of observing, questioning, and redirecting the thoughts and feelings that once ruled you. Awareness is not simply thinking about yourself. It is a deeper, quieter noticing, a steady presence that watches without judgment. In that watchful state, you begin to see how your inner world constructs your outer world, how the same reactions lead to the same results, and how you have been living on autopilot. Most people believe they are awake because their eyes are open, yet they are dreaming through their days. They react without pausing, speak without listening to themselves, and assume without questioning. In this sleepwalking state, change feels impossible because everything appears to happen from the outside. But the moment you stop, breathe, and observe, a space opens between stimulus and response. In that space is freedom. You are no longer a puppet pulled by old strings. You are a conscious participant capable of cutting those strings and tying new ones. Awareness is like switching on a light in a dark room. Before the light, you stumble and bump into furniture, blaming the room for your pain. When the light comes on, you see the layout clearly. The furniture hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. In the same way, awareness illuminates the structure of your habits, your assumptions, your emotions. You begin to notice the thoughts that whisper in your mind before you speak, the sensations in your body before you act, the emotions that rise like waves before they crash. With each observation, your sense of identification loosens. You stop saying, "I am angry," and start seeing anger is arising. You stop saying, "I am fearful," and start seeing fear is passing through. This subtle shift breaks the trance and opens the possibility of choosing differently. Becoming aware requires practice because the old self is seductive. Its habits feel comfortable even when they are painful because they are familiar. To develop awareness, you must cultivate a gentle curiosity about your inner life. You can pause before reacting to a situation, feel your breath, and ask yourself, what am I assuming right now? What am I feeling? Is this feeling an echo of the past or a true response to the present? These small acts of questioning bring unconscious material into the light of consciousness, where it can no longer control you invisibly. Awareness is also the foundation of self-responsibility. When you are unaware, you blame circumstances, people, or luck for your experience. When you become aware, you see the link between your inner state and your outer reality. This recognition is not meant to induce guilt, but to give you power. If you helped to create it through unexamined patterns, you can help to uncreate it through conscious patterns. You are not stuck with what you inherited from yesterday. You are free to rewrite the script today. Awareness functions as a gateway to imagination. Once you see the old pattern clearly, you can imagine the new pattern vividly. You can step into the feeling of the person you wish to be, rather than unconsciously acting as the person you have been. Without awareness, imagination remains weak and scattered. With awareness, imagination becomes focused, deliberate, and creative. This is why every lasting transformation begins not with action, but with awareness. Action flows from state, and state is revealed through awareness. Imagination is not a trivial pastime or a childish distraction. It is the creative force through which every event, circumstance, and experience is first born. Every invention, every work of art, every social movement, every transformation began as an image in someone's mind before it took shape in the world. The unseen precedes the seen, and the inner picture precedes the outer manifestation. When you begin to understand imagination as the womb of reality rather than a mere escape from it, you reclaim the power that has always been quietly operating through you. What you habitually picture, rehearse, and feel in your inner world is more potent than what you do mechanically in your outer world. The mind cannot distinguish vividly felt imagination from lived experience. The nervous system reacts as though it is happening now. In this way, every time you rehearse failure or disappointment in your imagination, you plant the seed for more of it. Every time you rehearse confidence, abundance, and success in your imagination, you condition your mind and body to expect and therefore attract those outcomes. Imagination is rehearsal for reality. Most people use imagination unconsciously, allowing it to replay yesterday's fears, resentments, and doubts. These mental movies become the blueprint for tomorrow's experiences. To reverse this pattern, you must begin to use imagination consciously, deliberately crafting inner scenes that represent the life you choose to live. This does not mean fantasizing idly. It means entering the state of the wish fulfilled, seeing and feeling your desired outcome as real now, and sustaining that inner state until it becomes familiar. To imagine effectively, you must not only see but also feel. Feeling is the creative medium. An image without feeling is like a seed thrown on dry soil. It has no power to grow. When you clothe an image with the sensory vividness and emotional conviction of reality, you impress it upon the subconscious, which then goes to work reorganizing your perceptions, behaviors, and opportunities to align with it. You find yourself thinking new thoughts, speaking new words, and noticing doors that were invisible before. The outer world begins to echo the new inner arrangement. Imagination also bypasses the limitations of the rational mind. Reason tells you what is probable based on the past. Imagination tells you what is possible beyond the past. When you live only by reason, you recycle your history. When you live by imagination, you step into creation. The images you hold become like magnets, drawing to you the people, ideas, and circumstances that match them. This is not superstition, but a reflection of how perception, expectation, and action flow from inner pictures. Practicing deliberate imagination requires stillness and attention. You withdraw from the noise of the senses, close your eyes, and let your inner vision take precedence over outer facts. You step into the scene of your fulfilled desire and experience it as though it were happening now. You feel the satisfaction, the relief, the gratitude of its completion. As you persist in this practice, the state of the wish fulfilled becomes more natural than the state of wanting. The old self that lacked dissolves, and the new self that has emerges as your dominant identity. From that identity, your behavior, decisions, and interactions automatically shift. And life responds accordingly. True inner transformation asks you to hold fast to a vision that has not yet appeared in the physical world. It asks you to trust an unseen reality more than the evidence of your senses. Most people reverse this order. They wait for proof before they believe. They wait for change before they feel changed. They wait for success before they feel successful. But the creative process begins within. You believe first and then you see. You assume first and then you experience. To persist without outer evidence is to anchor yourself in this inner law and refuse to be swayed by appearances. When you plant a seed in the soil, you do not dig it up each day to check its progress. You water it, you trust it, and you wait. The earth does its quiet work below the surface long before you see a sprout. In the same way, when you impress an idea upon your inner world, through imagination, feeling, and conviction, you must allow it time to germinate. Outer circumstances may appear unchanged at first. They may even contradict your vision. But beneath the surface, forces are moving, patterns are shifting, and opportunities are assembling to reflect the new state you have assumed. Persistence is not straining or forcing. It is quiet faithfulness to your inner picture. It is the steady refusal to abandon your new state simply because the old one still lingers. The old self may try to reclaim you with familiar emotions, familiar thoughts, and familiar evidence. People around you may question your new direction, not out of malice, but because they are still responding to the old version of you. Yet if you remain loyal to the inner reality, the outer must eventually conform, because the inner is the blueprint, and the outer is the construction. This loyalty to your new state can feel like walking through a fog. You can't yet see the landscape ahead, but you hold your direction because you know where you're going. In this fog, doubt whispers. It tempts you to measure progress by outer facts, to give up when nothing seems to happen. But progress is measured not by what you see, but by what you feel. If you are able to hold the feeling of the wish fulfilled longer and with more ease than before, you are advancing. If you find yourself less reactive to appearances and more anchored in your inner conviction, you are advancing. Persistence also reshapes the subconscious mind. Every time you return to your vision instead of reacting to appearances, you strengthen the neural pathways, emotional patterns, and energetic states associated with your desired reality. The subconscious begins to accept the new pattern as normal. When that threshold is crossed, outer events shift rapidly, sometimes dramatically, because they no longer need to fight against your inner resistance. This process is not about pretending or ignoring facts. It is about recognizing which facts are temporary and which truths are foundational. Outer conditions are fluid, inner state is causal. To persist without outer evidence is to live from cause rather than effect, from vision rather than circumstance. It is to act and feel as though your desired reality is already true, not because you are deluding yourself, but because you are aligning yourself with the creative principle that brings it forth. As you persist, your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to align automatically with this new state. You find yourself making different choices, meeting new people, noticing opportunities that were invisible before, and interpreting events in ways that reinforce rather than contradict your vision. Outer reality gradually reshapes itself around the new inner pattern you have sustained. Transformation begins at the instant you decide to be different, not at the moment circumstances give you permission to change. Most people delay their own evolution because they wait for signs, for approval, or for outer proof that a new path will succeed. Yet the very energy that creates new conditions does not flow until you make the inner choice. Decision is not a small mental preference. It is a deep acceptance of a new identity. When you decide, you cross a threshold inside yourself. You stop rehearsing the old story and start embodying the new one. You stop asking whether it will work and start living as though it already has. This kind of decision is an act of consciousness, not of force. It is not about pushing or striving, but about claiming. In the instant you claim a new self, your thoughts, feelings, and expectations begin to reorient. You may still have old habits, but their power starts to dissolve because they are no longer fueled by identification. Decision draws a line in the sand between who you have been and who you are now choosing to be. Even before the outer world changes, the inner world reorganizes itself, and from that reorganization, new actions flow naturally. Think of the difference between wanting and deciding. Wanting leaves you waiting, imagining a possibility but not inhabiting it. Deciding plants your flag. It is the moment an actor steps on stage and becomes the role. You do not wait for the costume to feel like the character. You put it on and step into it until it feels natural. Likewise, when you adopt the state of your chosen self, you begin to speak, move, and think as that self, and the environment responds accordingly. Immediate transformation in decision is possible because states of consciousness exist now, not in the future. There is no gradual becoming in the inner world, there is only entering. You enter a state by accepting it, by feeling it real, by making it your dwelling place rather than a distant hope. The outer world may take time to echo the new state, but you are already living in it internally, and from that inner residence, new experiences will arise. This inner shift changes your relationship with action. Instead of acting to make something happen, you act from the certainty that it is already happening. Your words carry a different tone, your body carries a different energy, and your decisions are guided by intuition rather than by fear. People sense this shift even if they cannot name it. Opportunities align with it because your behavior, attention, and perception have already changed. Decision also quiets the mind's endless debate. As long as you are weighing, doubting, or half-committed, the mind produces arguments, fears, and counter-images. The moment you decide, that noise diminishes because you have chosen your direction. Energy that was scattered in uncertainty gathers into focus. That focus gives power to imagination, and imagination gives shape to reality. In this way, decision compresses time. What once seemed far off begins to approach rapidly because your state of being no longer postpones it. You may still encounter outer conditions that contradict your decision, but they no longer carry the same authority. They appear as remnants of the old state rather than as predictions of the future. Each time you reaffirm your decision inwardly, you accelerate the dissolution of the old pattern and anchor more deeply into the new one. The outer shift may look gradual, but the true transformation happened the moment you chose within yourself.